I was known as the wild one by all the folks around.
Ever wondered which Hollywood stars took the phrase "work hard, play harder" to a whole new level? Don't miss out. Watch till the end.
Bubbles.
Number 20. Humphrey Bogart. You might remember him as the suave leading man of Hollywood's golden era. But did you know that his trademark scar above his lip had a rather mysterious origin? Some say that scar was a result of a childhood brawl, while others believe it happened during his time as a sailor in the Navy. But if you ask Bogart's drinking buddies, they'll tell you it was earned in the gritty speakeasies of New York during the Prohibition era. During his early years as a Broadway actor, Bogart was notorious for his after-hours escapades. He'd often drink until he passed out at the bar, and if anyone dared to wake him up, well, let's just say he didn't take kindly to it. This behavior got him booted from more than one production. But Bogart's talent shone through, and he eventually made his way to Hollywood. In Tinseltown, he set up shop at the infamous Garden of Allah, a place known for its wild clientele and a 24-hour lounge that catered to their needs. Bogart's legendary drinking buddies included none other than the renowned director John Huston, his great love Lauren Bacall, and even a young Frank Sinatra. It was Bogart who laid the groundwork for what would later become the legendary Rat Pack. Even with his wild reputation, Bogart claimed to have gone on the wagon only once in his life. He famously quipped, quote, "That was the worst afternoon of my life." Number 19. W.C. Fields. Fields was infamous for his dedication when it came to alcohol, famously saying, quote, "I have never imbibed while sleeping, and I drink nothing stronger than gin before breakfast." But here's the twist. This guy was born right above a bar in the days before Prohibition. When Prohibition hit, Fields went into full survival mode. He hoarded thousands of bottles of whiskey and gin in his attic, like he was preparing for the booze apocalypse. Even after Prohibition waved the white flag, Fields still kept a substantial stash of emergency alcohol at home. When asked why, he'd say something like, quote, "Never can be sure Prohibition won't be back, my boy." Paranoid or prepared? The classic W.C. Fields drinking tale involves him carrying around a vacuum flask filled with gin martinis on set. What's even worse, he'd refer to it as his lemonade. Picture this, Fields sipping on what looks like lemonade but packs the punch of a martini. That's when comedy gold happened. But the pranksters got to him one day. Someone switched out his gin martini with actual lemonade. The result, a furious Fields shouting, quote, "Who put lemonade in my lemonade?" Number 18. Peter O'Toole. The man who bought a pub because he just couldn't get enough of drinking in it. While Hollywood has had its fair share of serious, brooding alcoholics like Spencer Tracy, Peter O'Toole was the whimsical, fun-loving drunk who kept things lively. This serious, dramatic actor was anything but serious when it came to partying. In his youth, O'Toole lived on a barge that, legend has it, sank during one of his epic parties because there were just too many people on board. That's what we call a party gone overboard, quite literally. When it came to life's big moments, O'Toole had a knack for turning them into epic drinking adventures. Instead of a traditional wedding reception, he and his wife Shawn embarked on a ridiculous pub crawl. And when Shawn was giving birth to their first child, guess who finally showed up? A fully loaded Peter O'Toole with a chorus of inebriated actors in tow, serenading the entire hospital. But O'Toole's love for the bottle didn't stop there. He had a habit of starting to drink, blacking out, and waking up in the most unexpected places, like Mexico or in a stranger's apartment with none other than Michael Caine. He cherished the art of drinking so much that when a pub threatened to close its doors on him one night, he did the unthinkable. He bought the pub right then and there. He did return the next day to destroy the check, but the legend goes that he remained close friends with the pub owner until his passing. Here's a story that's the stuff of legends. Peter O'Toole once cut off the tip of his finger and in a true hold my drink moment, used the brandy he was drinking to sterilize it. Then he reattached the finger himself and had a swig of that same brandy. Despite his larger-than-life lifestyle, O'Toole excelled and lived a relatively healthy and consistently prolific life. He received 8 Academy Award nominations during his career, with the final nod coming at the ripe old age of 74 for his role in Venus. Number 17. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift was a brilliant actor, but an incredibly sloppy drunk. Holding his liquor with grace? That wasn't his strong suit. His life was marred by inner turmoil, and he sought solace at the bottom of a bottle. Part of Clift's struggle was living in a time when being openly homosexual in Hollywood was absolutely unacceptable, especially for a leading man. However, amidst his struggles, he found a friend, confidant, and drinking partner in none other than the iconic Elizabeth Taylor. She knew his secret, and she stood by him through thick and thin until the very end. But tragedy struck after a fateful dinner party hosted by Taylor. That night, after supposedly having just a single glass of wine, Clift got behind the wheel and ended up driving his car off the road in Benedict Canyon. The accident not only scarred his handsome face, but also marked a turning point in his life. Clift's acting teacher, Robert Lewis, famously referred to his heavy drinking as, quote, the longest suicide in Hollywood history. Even during the filming of The Misfits with Marilyn Monroe, she remarked that Clift was in worse shape than she was, and that's saying something. Despite his struggles, Clift continued to work, earning a Best Supporting Actor nomination for his almost entirely ad-libbed performance in Judgment at Nuremberg. But tragically, this tortured soul's journey came to an end at the age of 45. A heart attack, a result of years of drug and alcohol abuse, finally claimed his life. Number 16. Clara B. When it comes to classic Hollywood, it can be challenging to separate fact from fantasy. Stories about the stars often blur the lines between reality and myth, thanks to studio spin, fan exaggeration, and even plain old-fashioned lies spread by bitter rivals. Clara B's life was no exception, as she found herself the target of salacious rumors and tall tales. One infamous incident involved an article in the Coastal Times, which painted Bo as the poster child for every indecency imaginable. It was so outrageous that it's widely considered a fabrication. Then came Kenneth Anger's notorious book, Hollywood Babylon, which claimed that Bo had quite the fondness for the USC football team, among other scandalous allegations. But here's the twist. While some of these stories were pure fiction, there was a grain of truth in others. Clara B, often hailed as the original It Girl, did lead a wild and carefree life that contributed to her reputation. She helped define the modern image of the flapper. She loved to party, frequented bars, engaged in relationships, some with married men, and unapologetically flaunted it all on the silver screen. One particularly memorable episode involved Paramount president B.P. Schulberg inviting her to a party honoring a newly appointed judge. Clara, already in a state of inebriation, made a grand entrance and introduced herself to the judge in the most unconventional way possible, with a passionate French kiss right in front of his wife. She then took things up a notch by dancing with the judge until studio personnel had to escort her out of the party. Number 15. Tula Bankhead. Our next Hollywood star, Tula Bankhead, had a story as wild as her name. She wasn't your typical Alabama congressman's daughter. She was a pioneer who left home at the tender age of 15 to chase her dreams in the Big Apple, New York City. Now, what makes Tula's story truly fascinating is her residence during her New York days, the legendary Algonquin Hotel. Living there brought her into close quarters with New York's high society elite, and she became a part of the notorious Algonquin Round Table. This round table was legendary not just for its witty banter, but also for its legendary imbibing, with notable tipplers like Dorothy Parker, George S. Kaufman, and Robert Benchley. Tula's early indulgence in the party scene led Frank Case, the owner of the Algonquin, to humorously remark, quote, "I can either run this hotel or look after Tula Bankhead. I can't do both." As her acting career blossomed, first on Broadway and then in Hollywood, she decided to expand her chemical horizons. Tula wasn't one to shy away from a challenge. She could down a fifth of whiskey in under 30 minutes. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. She also dabbled in poppers, horse tranquilizers, and her own unique concoction, Coca-Cola mixed with spirits of ammonia. As the years went by, Tallulah's wild lifestyle began to take its toll on her health and looks. But did she slow down? Not a chance. In fact, as she approached the final chapter of her life, she was guzzling over a quart of bourbon every day. She mixed that potent potion with a cocktail of pills, both legal and not so legal, and sprinkled in a dash of cocaine for good measure. And fittingly, Tula Bankhead's last words as she departed this world were said to be, quote, codeine, bourbon. She lived life to the fullest, regardless of the consequences. Number 14. Barbara Payton. Barbara arrived in Hollywood as a stunning 20-year-old with dreams of making it big as an actress and model. And boy, did she achieve those dreams quickly. But here's the twist. Her fall from grace was even faster, caused by alcohol and drugs that tragically ended her life before she even reached the age of 40. In the late 1940s, Hollywood was in the midst of its golden age, and Barbara was right in the middle of it all. In fact, columnist Harrison Carroll crowned her, quote, the queen of the nightclubs. Barbara was rubbing shoulders with the likes of Howard Hughes, Bob Hope, and even notorious mobster Mickey Cohen. Barbara didn't just bask in the Hollywood nightlife. She also made her mark in several big films like Trapped, Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, and Only the Valiant. But here's where her story takes a dark turn. Suddenly, the glitz and glamour of Hollywood parties and the allure of the casting couch started to overshadow her career. Her life became a whirlwind of self-destructive behaviors and troubling relationships. One of the most infamous episodes in Barbara's life was a love triangle involving her, French Otone, and Tom Neal. It was a recipe for disaster. Her life spiraled out of control, and she ended up a mere shadow of her former self. In her memoir, I Am Not Ashamed, Barbara candidly poured out her heart. She wrote, quote, I always have a little too much rosé wine in me. Her story is full of highs and lows, detailing her rise to stardom and the heart-wrenching depths of her fall. Barbara's journey came to a tragic end at the young age of 39 due to complications from alcohol-induced heart and kidney disease. Number 13. Spencer Tracy. Spencer Tracy was not your typical fun drunk. In fact, he was quite the opposite. This two-time Oscar winner and 9-time nominee had a reputation for being mean and violent when he was under the influence, which unfortunately was quite often. His drunken behavior included frequent bar fights, run-ins with the police, and even a surreal incident where he woke up in a padded cell in a Chicago asylum. Tracy's aversion to flying was infamous. He would avoid it at all costs, opting for train travel instead. He had a unique travel companion, his trusty suitcase filled with bottles. As he crisscrossed the country, he would pass the time doing one thing and one thing only, drinking. Now, Tracy wasn't always drowning in alcohol. He would go through periods of sobriety where he tried to stay away from the bottle entirely. But when he did decide to take a drink, he would go all in. There were times when he'd lock himself in hotel rooms for weeks on end, with his favorite spot being the bathtub. During these binges, he wouldn't even get up to use the toilet. Tracy's drinking problem reached a breaking point when the Fox Film Corporation issued him an ultimatum: quit drinking or lose your job. How did Tracy respond? Well, he simply walked out of the office, strolled over to the bar across the street, and got himself completely plastered. Then, he returned to the office and caused quite the scene. MGM later picked up Tracy, fully aware of his struggles. They even had a dedicated team known as the Tracy Squad on standby. Their sole purpose was to take care of the talented yet troubled actor. Every bar within a 25-mile radius had their number on speed dial. When called, an ambulance would swoop in, accompanied by a doctor and several security guards, to whisk Tracy away for some sobering up, away from the prying eyes of the public. Number 12. Robert Mitchum. Unlike the polished leading men of his era, Mitchum was more of a dark and brooding presence. His off-screen antics were the stuff of legend, and he even found himself behind bars after falling victim to a police sting targeting Hollywood's hard-partying elite. One of Mitchum's most notorious drinking stories comes from the set of Not as a Stranger. He described the film's cast, which included the likes of Frank Sinatra, Broderick Crawford, and Lee Marvin, as, quote, not so much a cast as it was a brewery. These actors didn't waste any time. The drinking would start in the morning and continue through the wild parties at night. Among the debauchery, hotel rooms were mercilessly trashed. Crawford was coerced into eating Sinatra's wig. Yep, you heard that right. And poor Broderick found himself being thrown off a hotel balcony. Needless to say, their room deposits were not refunded. During the filming of His Kind of Woman, Mitchum had a scene where he was supposed to be attacked by a gang of thugs. However, on the day of shooting, Mitchum had already started hitting the bottle early in the day. Somewhere along the line, he seemed to have forgotten the whole pretending aspect of acting. The result? Mitchum, a formidable man and a lifelong brawler, started tossing around the unsuspecting stuntmen. Naturally, the stuntmen, who were just doing their jobs, took offense, and a full-blown, not-so-pretend brawl erupted on set. But this was just Robert Mitchum being Robert Mitchum, as his reputation for unruly behavior had already been well established. During the filming of River of No Return, director Otto Preminger took the extraordinary step of banning alcohol from the set. However, when he caught an actor carrying a bottle of vodka toward the trailers, he was ready to give the young man a piece of his mind. That is, until the actor explained, quote, I'm just taking it to Mitchum. Preminger's response? Oh well, that's different. And he allowed the actor to proceed with the delivery. Number 11. Richard Burton. While it may be an exaggeration to say someone is drunk all the time, Burton certainly pushed the boundaries of that notion, coming closer to it than most. Burton's relationship with alcohol began at the tender age of 12 and persisted relentlessly throughout his life, despite doctors' warnings and personal upheavals. When he passed away at the age of 58, his body bore the unmistakable scars of alcohol-induced damage, the likes of which medical science had rarely seen. Renowned for his Shakespearean prowess, both on stage and screen, Burton became one of the most respected actors of his time. He was a frequent collaborator with fellow alcohol enthusiast Peter O'Toole, and starred in iconic films such as Cleopatra and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, alongside his on-again, off-again wife, Elizabeth Taylor. When the tumultuous couple was together, Burton's daily routine was a staggering display of alcohol consumption. He would kick off his drinking marathon at the crack of dawn around 7 a.m. His poison of choice? A case of beer to start the day. Once he polished that off, he'd seamlessly transition to hard liquor. Remarkably, Taylor, who was often portrayed as his drinking partner in crime, wouldn't join the festivities until a comparatively modest 10 a.m. In one remarkable instance during the filming of The Night of the Iguana in 1964, Burton demanded not one but two private bars, one at the top of the staircase leading to the set and another at the bottom. This bespoke arrangement allowed him to maintain his liquid equilibrium throughout the shoot. However, the toll of this unrelenting lifestyle would eventually catch up with him. In 1984, Richard Burton passed away suddenly from a cerebral hemorrhage. By that time, his kidneys had swollen to abnormal proportions, and his spine was coated from top to bottom in crystallized alcohol. Number 10. Anne Margaret. Anne Margaret, often celebrated as one of the original sex kittens of Hollywood, was not just a screen siren. She was also a vivacious spirit who knew how to have a good time. Her on-screen exuberance was not just an act. It was a reflection of her genuine love for performing. However, her journey through the glitz and glamour of Hollywood was not without its struggles, particularly when it came to her relationship with alcohol. Anne Margaret's rise to fame included starring alongside the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, in the iconic film Viva Las Vegas. Their chemistry on and off the screen was palpable, leading to a passionate affair that endured until Presley's untimely passing. Throughout this whirlwind romance, the two indulged in relentless partying. However, it was during the filming of RPM, a student protest drama, that Anne Margaret's battle with alcohol began to take a darker turn. She turned to alcohol as a means to cope with anxiety, particularly in relation to performing nude scenes for the film. By 1971, her life had spiraled out of control, and she confessed to struggling to differentiate between fantasy and reality. Her days were marked by consuming a fifth of scotch, passing out, waking up, and then drinking even more before passing out once more. Fortunately, Anne Margaret's story takes a turn for the better. In 1980, she made the courageous decision to quit drinking for good. Her path to recovery became an essential part of her life's narrative, and she shared her experiences candidly in her autobiography, My Story. During a 1982 interview with Roger Ebert, a waiter offered her a cocktail, to which she replied with a sly smile, quote, "I don't drink, but I do the hoochie coo." Number 9. Richard Harris. Richard Harris was not only a remarkable actor, but also a notorious member of the O'Toole, Burton, Oliver Reed League of legendary drinkers. The Irish-born Harris, known for his roles in iconic films like This Sporting Life and A Man Called Horse, lived life to the fullest, both on and off the screen. Harris's penchant for alcohol was evident from a young age, as he found himself in trouble as a teenager after crashing his father's delivery truck into a bridge. All thanks to a few pints at the pub. His cheeky response to the police officer's inquiry about the accident, "Sorry, officer, I'm just delivering this bridge to Limerick," foreshadowed his spirited approach to life. His journey to fame took him from the London stage to Hollywood, where he gained both recognition and wealth. This newfound success allowed Harris to fully embrace the lifestyle he desired, which included bedding whomever caught his fancy, consuming copious amounts of vodka, up to 2.5 bottles a day, and becoming a regular in the London drunk tank. His preferred order, known as his usual, consisted of 6 double vodkas, promptly lined up by attentive bartenders who knew him well. During one particularly memorable drinking spree, Harris was discovered lying in the middle of a street by a local policeman. When asked what he was doing, Harris replied, quote, "The world is spinning." The logical follow-up question about lying in the street prompted an equally logical response. Quote, "I'm waiting for my house to go by." While his on-screen performances were marked by intensity, off-set, Harris was known to swing between manic joy and black rages. Despite his tumultuous personal life, he made an effort to shield his children from the darker aspects of his personality. His son Jared recalled a rollicking adventure during a trip to Dublin, where a one-day journey turned into a 4-day escapade, thanks to Harris's magnetic charisma and love for adventure. Against the odds, Harris aged relatively well and even had the honor of playing Albus Dumbledore in the first 2 Harry Potter films, before his passing at the age of 72. Number 8. Paul Lynde. Paul Lynde, famous for his role as Uncle Arthur in Bewitched and his iconic presence as the center square on Hollywood Squares, was not only a comedic genius, but also one of the first openly gay public figures in post-war America. While his wit and humor were legendary, his relationship with alcohol often led him down a darker path. Lynde was a fixture in the underground gay bars of Hollywood, enjoying the lively social scene. However, his indulgence in alcohol had a transformative effect, turning his typically generous wit into something more caustic and cruel. Under the influence, Lynde had a knack for identifying people's vulnerabilities and tearing them apart verbally, resulting in his exclusion from numerous social gatherings. As he grew older, Lynde's struggle with alcohol-induced verbal recklessness escalated. He found himself thrown out of bars, in confrontations with law enforcement, and, shockingly, uttering racial slurs during his college's homecoming weekend while intoxicated. In one particularly memorable incident, after a drunken police chase that ended with a DUI, Lynde rolled down his car window and, with his distinctive lisp, casually ordered, quote, "I'll have a double cheeseburger and a chocolate shake." Tragically, Paul Lynde's life was cut short at the age of 56 due to a coronary incident, a result of the years of damage inflicted on his heart by alcohol. Number 7. Ethel Barrymore. The Barrymore family is renowned for its exceptional talent in both theater and film, but it's also notorious for its members' insatiable appetites for various vices. Ethel Barrymore, often referred to as the First Lady of the American theater due to her illustrious career lasting 6 decades, was not immune to the family's struggles with addiction, particularly alcohol. Ethel's career took flight in the 1890s, where she dazzled audiences on both Broadway and on London's West End. However, it was during this period that she began grappling with alcohol, turning to the bottle whenever personal troubles arose. Much like her brother John, Ethel found herself caught in the clutches of alcoholism. Fortunately, in her 30s, she managed to regain control of her life and became a teetotaler. Quote, "No one in my family should drink, because it's poisonous to us," she said. Ethel continued to grace the stage and screen with her presence until the 1950s, outliving her brothers who also battled their own demons. Number 6. John Barrymore. The legendary Barrymore acting dynasty, known for its extraordinary talent, also harbored a dark secret, a propensity for addiction, particularly alcoholism. John Barrymore, a distinguished member of this family, struggled to escape the clutches of his personal demons, ultimately becoming more renowned for his vices than his acting prowess. John's tumultuous relationship with alcohol began at an alarmingly young age, with some accounts suggesting he started drinking as early as 14. His descent into alcoholism only deepened over the years, and he soon began to employ his prodigious talent as a means to fuel his insatiable addictions. Taking to the stage in the early 1900s, John swiftly ascended to the heights of theatrical acclaim. By 1920, he was hailed as one of the industry's greatest talents, celebrated for his mellifluous voice and his uncanny ability to fully inhabit the characters he portrayed. However, the allure of Hollywood's bright lights, coupled with the substantial salaries it offered, proved irresistible, feeding his voracious appetites for alcohol, drugs, and debauchery. John's Hollywood soirees were legendary, with his drinking companions including luminaries like Errol Flynn, director Raoul Walsh, Anthony Quinn, and W.C. Fields. This notorious group, christened the Bundy Drive Gang, became infamous for their escapades involving alcohol and women. By the 1930s, John's wild party persona had become a liability, leading to his blacklisting by almost every major studio. His untimely demise on May 29, 1942, resulted from pneumonia and cirrhosis of the liver, a grim testament to the devastating toll of his alcoholism. Tragically, John's family could not escape the family curse, as his daughter Diana and son John Jr. also fell victim to addiction. Remarkably, his granddaughter, Drew Barrymore, though grappling with her own battles with drinking and drugs, managed to overcome her demons, carving out a successful career as an actor, film producer, and director in her own right. Number 5. Orson Wells. Orson Wells, the legendary filmmaker and actor, had a complex relationship with alcohol that began with a tragic family history of addiction. His father, a notorious alcoholic, destroyed the family fortune due to his irresponsible drinking habits. This tumultuous upbringing led the young Wells to sever ties with his family at the age of 15, driven by the condition that he would only return if his father gave up alcohol. Unfortunately, this never came to pass, and Wells's father ultimately succumbed to complications from alcoholism, never reconciling with his son. This abandonment left Wells plagued by profound guilt, a guilt that paradoxically fueled his own struggles with alcohol. During his time in Rome, while working on black magic, Wells played an unwitting role in popularizing the Negroni, a cocktail previously little known outside of Italy. He sent a message to an American newspaper extolling the virtues of this drink, citing its benefits. Quote, "The bitters are good for your liver. The gin is bad for it. They balance each other out." Regardless of the scientific accuracy of this claim, Wells's endorsement piqued the interest of many Americans, causing sales of the rust-colored gin cocktail to soar in bars across the nation. As Wells's personal excesses grew, so did his waistline. Once svelte, he ballooned to nearly 400 pounds. His daily dinner regimen consisted of 2 rare steaks and a pint of scotch, contributing to both his weight gain and his erratic onset behavior. He was known to consume alcohol between takes, and in his later years, likely due to his role in boosting the Negronis' popularity, Wells became a spokesperson for various alcohol companies. Number 4. Andre the Giant. While many knew him as the 8th wonder of the world, an imposing French wrestler standing at a towering 7.5 feet and weighing around 500 pounds, Andre the Giant is equally celebrated for his role as Fezzik in the beloved family classic The Princess Bride. His filmography also includes Trading Mom, Mickey and Maude, Conan the Destroyer, and various television appearances. However, it's not his wrestling prowess or acting career that lands him on this list, but rather his legendary affinity for alcohol. Andre was known to consume an astonishing 7,000 daily calories of it. During one epic 6-hour session, he downed a staggering 119 standard bottles of beer before eventually collapsing in a hotel corridor. His drinking buddies simply draped a tarp over him. In Kansas City, a bar owner offered Andre the privilege of staying as long as he kept drinking, and he accepted the challenge, remaining at the bar until 5 a.m. after downing about 40 vodka and tonic cocktails. Despite being one of the highest-paid wrestlers of his era, a significant portion of his income vanished into the bottom of countless beer and liquor bottles. By the end of a month of filming The Princess Bride, his bar tab had reached an astounding $40,000. Despite his gentle demeanor when sober, Andre transformed into an unstoppable force under the influence. On one occasion, he single-handedly flipped a small car with several individuals inside who had dared to provoke him at a bar. Another time, he and fellow wrestler Dusty Rhodes commandeered 2 horse-drawn carriages and took to the streets of Manhattan. Sadly, Andre's excessive alcohol consumption, combined with acromegaly, a condition that contributed to his decline, took a significant toll on his health. Experts believe that his unhealthy lifestyle led to diabetes and ultimately played a role in his untimely death at the age of 46 due to heart failure. Number 3. Oliver Reed. In the late 60s and early 70s, Oliver Reed was a British box office sensation, known for his impressive performances in films like The Trap, Oliver, and The Three Musketeers series. However, his real-life persona didn't quite match the charm of his on-screen characters. Reed once candidly admitted that he did not live in the world of sobriety, and that statement couldn't have been more accurate. His legendary capacity for alcohol consumption astounded even his fellow actors. David Hemmings, another actor and producer, claimed that Reed could down 20 pints of lager with a gin or creme de menthe chaser and still have the stamina to run a mile for a wager. In a famous episode, Reed reportedly consumed a jaw-dropping 126 pints of beer in just 24 hours, capping off the feat with a horizontal handstand on the bar. Reed's drunken escapades were the stuff of legend, marked by a chaotic blend of pranks, violence, and infidelity. One notable incident occurred in 1980 when he attended a christening at a church in such an inebriated state that he swayed uncontrollably. Later, at the reception, he held a baby in his arms and stumbled around, pretending to play rugby with the infant as the ball. His penchant for exposing his tattooed genitalia in public earned the moniker Mighty Mallet. Reed once famously scaled a chimney naked, masquerading as Santa Claus, urinated on the Australian flag, and even lay inebriated on an airport baggage conveyor. As fate would have it, Oliver Reed's final days were as tumultuous as the rest of his life. While shooting his last film, Gladiator, he embarked on a night of heavy drinking, consuming 8 bottles of beer, 3 bottles of rum, and multiple shots of whiskey. Tragically, this binge culminated in a heart attack, and he passed away shortly thereafter. Reflecting on his tumultuous journey, Reed often expressed just one regret, that he hadn't managed to, quote, drink every pub dry and sleep with every woman on the planet. Number 2. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn, the dashing Hollywood heartthrob and original bad boy of Tinseltown, was notorious for his hedonistic lifestyle. His legendary exploits with alcohol and romantic escapades have become the stuff of Hollywood lore. Flynn carried a doctor's bag with him to work every day, but it didn't contain typical medicine. Instead, it held 2/5 of vodka, which he considered his, quote, daily medicine. Flynn once got thoroughly rum drunk with a pre-revolutionary Fidel Castro, predicting that the young revolutionary would be remembered as one of history's great figures. His alcohol-fueled antics on set were so disruptive that studio mogul Jack Warner personally shut down the bar on the Warner Brothers lot to curb Flynn's drinking during working hours. To discreetly maintain his alcohol consumption, Flynn developed some creative habits. In the mornings, he opted for Bloody Marys to mask the smell of alcohol on his breath. Another favorite trick involved injecting vodka into oranges, allowing him to snack on these boozy fruits throughout the day. At just 32 years old, Flynn was warned by a doctor that his destructive lifestyle would lead to his demise within 5 years. Ignoring this dire prognosis, he continued to live life in the fast lane, indulging in excesses of all kinds. Ultimately, Errol Flynn passed away at the age of 50, succumbing to a heart attack induced by acute cirrhosis of the liver. In a fitting tribute to his tumultuous relationship with alcohol, he was laid to rest with 6 bottles of whiskey in his coffin. Number 1. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra, the iconic crooner, had a lifelong relationship with Jack Daniels that was as legendary as his voice. His early years were shaped by the environment of a speakeasy, where he began singing for tips as a precocious 8-year-old. This early exposure set the stage for a life spent in bars, where he worked, played, sang, and indulged in his vices. Sinatra's reputation as a world-class boozer was solidified during his Rat Pack days, as he and his close-knit group of friends, whom he affectionately referred to as the Olympic Drinking Team, became famous for their carousing and revelry. While his relationships with women were tumultuous and frequently in the spotlight, one constant companion in his life was Jack Daniels. Sinatra's love for the whiskey was unwavering, and he had a specific way of enjoying it. In a glass tumbler, served with 2 fingers of whiskey, 3 or 4 ice cubes, and just a hint of flat water to bring out the flavors. At his Twin Palms compound, the signal for drinking time was the hoisting of a Jack Daniels flag, and he even had a dedicated company representative responsible for ensuring that his dressing room was always stocked with a case of JD for his shows. When performing on stage, Sinatra often kept a bottle of Jack Daniels visible on his ever-present bar cart. During one memorable moment, he announced to the audience, quote, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Jack Daniels, and it's the nectar of the gods," inadvertently boosting Jack's global sales. His love for the spirit ran so deep that he was buried with a bottle of Black Label in his pocket. To this day, there exists a special blend of Jack Daniels that bears his name as a tribute to the bourbon baritone. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed our juicy content, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe for more upcoming content, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a Hollywood secret. Stay tuned.